So this is the countertop, the present countertop in the cabin, and I have this 2.5-inch thick maple, but I don't know if you can tell there, it's the thing probably weighs 300 pounds, but it was severely warped. You can see where it meets the sink, so it had to come out. I waited about 10 months and it just, maybe even longer, it just wasn't going to dry up, so I had to take it out. What I'm doing here is adding a resin countertop. So this is 3/4 inch plywood. I will double that up so it'll be a total of 1.5 inches. Now I'm cutting out the hole where the sink will go. Again, this piece, these doubled pieces will sit on top of the sink. It's a farmer's sink, it's stainless steel, it's pretty big. So this is the backsplash, and that blue tape is just blocking off area where I don't need to paint. That's the paint that I'm going to put on the top to help seal it. The dominant color is black for the resin pour, which is why I put a base coat of black down first. Keep in mind it is to match the rolling kitchen island that I did. I'll leave links to those videos at the end of this video. So the next day it was dry and it's very flat, and what I'm going to do today is the resin. So I level this piece up and put tape on the underside. Here I put a bead of caulk, which is nice. That'll hold back the resin from going into the raw area, which isn't necessary, but it will flow over the outside edge. And I don't know if you can see, it's nice and level there, but I got tape on the outside irregular edge, which is kind of meant to emulate the mountain. It isn't the cabin, so it is in the mountains. So that was the idea behind that. So now I'm getting ready to pour the resin. 1 cup will be for the black and 1 cup will be for the bronze. I'll mix the copper separately. Sometimes if I have a lighter color, I'll just put a little copper in that leftover color. And the copper is so dominant that it really pops through. So I figured out equal parts and drew lines on these containers. I start out by adding part B, which is more fluid. It has a greater viscosity. And then I add the last one, which is A, which is thick. You can see how thick it is there. And it's cold in my workshop, so it makes it even thicker and harder to work with. There's no science in how much powder you put in there. It's a black Perlex resin. You just get a feel for it and then just go for it, and you can try a little or you can try a lot. If you use less, you will make your resin more translucent. So if you're doing it on top of an image or something and you want a fade or something like that, just use less and it will be more translucent and you'll be able to see your image through the resin. I like to work with resin at about mid-60s, mid-70s, not hotter, not colder. If it's too hot, it just pours right off of your surface and you lose a lot of it. If it's too cold, you're struggling to get it spread nicely. So it's a catch-22. You have to really make a decision. Like I said, about 65, between 65 and 70 is really optimal for me. So I start with pouring the black first, and then what I do is I just smear it out with my hands, and I also hit that top irregular, like mountain looking shaped edge, which I can do more easily. It's laying flat, which it would be very impossible to do if it were standing vertically the way it will be installed. So doing this backsplash first on a flat surface, a level flat surface, is the way to go if you decide to make one of these. Now I'm adding the bronze, and it's very fluid. It's really a perfect viscosity, and it's not draining all over the place, and I'm not losing it. Again, temperature is really relevant. So I'll come back, and what I do is dab it with my hand. You can see me patting it. Now I'm adding the copper, the accent color, And I will likewise dab this in the same manner as I did with the bronze into the black. And it really adds a nice level of depth to the overall look and feel of the piece. Now I'm back to the countertop where I'm adding these 2 thick layers of plywood, and I used premium plywood, so I paid up for it. It was not cheap, but if you do woodworking at all, you know the prices of lumber are astronomical. I screwed the first one down to the framework. That's the first one. And the second one gets screwed to this piece. So I'm trying to figure out how far in the framework is so I can attach it well to that. That's what I'm doing now. The second piece is lined up perfectly with the bottom piece, particularly where the sink is. And then I move on to the next stage, which is adding the Bondo to all of the edges. After I have sealed off any area that needs to be free of Bondo, then I move on to making the Bondo and mixing that up, wearing a mask, and then applying that. Once that dries, I scrape off any high spots. That will be higher than the resin itself. When the Bondo is dry, it can be very sharp. So it's very important that you scrape off all of these edges and knock down any high points, because you don't want it sharp, you want it nice and smooth. So this process took several days. Obviously things needed to dry, and now I'm putting on a wood filler. So I'm filling in all the dimples from the screws and any areas that had gaps or anything like that. I want it to lay as flat. I want the resin to lay as flat as possible. And I also put a bead of caulk along the back between the backsplash and the countertop. Now I'm going to paint it. So I paint the underside, the edges, and the top with this oil-based black Rust-Oleum paint. So I mixed this black resin up, both parts are in there, with the black Perlex, and it's probably 32 ounces. It's a very big surface, so I just went all out and mixed it up, and I did it for about 5 minutes using the drill. So now on to the pour, and I just use a random pattern. There's no science to it because I'm going to spread this black over the entire surface before I add the bronze. Yes, I'm doing it differently than I did with the backsplash. Not too different. I didn't cover all the surfaces with the black when I did the backsplash like I am going to do with this. And I also did the edges, and I had to like tuck it into the, you can see the backsplash there, it's installed, but I had to tuck it into the place where they meet, that crack, and where the caulk is, to make sure that the resin got filled in that area. So basically I just do this, and I don't even know how long this took me. So now I'm about to pour the second color, that being bronze, and you can see that's a pretty hefty amount too, close to the same amount of black, but maybe not quite as much. So I do that down the entire length of the countertop, and I save a little bit of this because I don't know if I'm going to want to adjust it later, so I hold off. I think I had about 1 inch more, but there's probably 6 inches high of this bronze resin that I mixed up, so I save a little bit for potential changes. So I'm basically following the same pattern of dabbing and pulling up, and it leaves a very organic look, which I love. And you know, it's a cabin and you want it to look kind of like stone perhaps. Or here I'm dabbing a little area on the backsplash that needs some help. But you know, I just keep working with it and working with it until I get something I like. So after I torched the countertop and got all the air bubbles out, and I babysat it for maybe an hour or so, and you can still see the tape on the edges. That'll have to be removed and smoothed down, and I'll pull away all the drips, which I took that tape off and rubbed underneath the countertop to try to eliminate as many resin drips as possible. I had a couple, I just chiseled them off. This is the next day. I took off the plastic and you can kind of see the beauty of it. I've also put the top coat on, so it is a matte finish, and it's just really nice. I really like it. The gloss scratches, so this top coat's perfect. I hope you enjoyed my series in resin pour and cabinet and island build. Please subscribe, please like, please share. Please hit the bell button for notifications, and I'll see you on the next one.